good to go.
Good evening. We'd like to call the December 2015 Park and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting to order. I'm Sean Datchler filling in for Bob, and we can have introductions starting on my right.
Blaine Meyer.
Kathleen Baker.
Daniel Tupper.
Doug Neely.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Fowler-Tice.
And the first thing on the agenda is approval of last month's minutes. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none, the motion carries. Are there any citizen comments for issues not on the agenda? Okay. We'll move on to general business. First thing is Willamette Falls Legacy Project update.
It's a really quick update tonight, unless you have any questions. Of course, I think most of you were on the PRAC tour on the site. I believe it was on October 30th. So thanks for your participation. The Riverwalk design process is continuing to move forward. We will keep you notified as to the process, and especially when there's any type of either PRAC opportunity or public input opportunity into the design process, which there will be over the next 18 to 24 months. We've talked about that a little bit, so I'll keep those comments brief. That's the main thing for this evening, and of course you can always go on the website and check things out if you want to see new information. So unless you had any questions, that was just a quick update tonight.
Questions? Okay, now let's move on to the pickleball update and new request.
I'll give you an update here. Are you with the pickleball group? Okay, great. The rest of the regular group isn't. Yeah. So we do have one representative from the Pickleball Association, and you may wish to speak. We'll see how this goes, but I put at your place a letter. It's actually front and back. They're both dated on the same date. I received them from a couple of different representatives. The one that is the shorter of the two and not on letterhead is kind of more the actual request part of it, if you will, and the other one was just sort of intended as an update. But the first part of this is just an update in general about the pickleball, which again is at Hillendale Park on the tennis courts area. And we've been doing that for a few months, and we were kind of doing that as a trial thing. Temporary lines were put on the court, and then the equipment it's left on site in lock boxes, but it has to be brought out and set up. And the folks in the Pickleball Association really have done most of the work. We've just kind of helped put the word out and supported them with the facility. Of course, PRAC was involved in that decision. But I'm happy to report to you that things are going really well. I think some of you may have visited there previously. I've heard some discussion about some of you visiting. Actually, the date of this letter on October 21st, I think, is the date that I went out there and met with the group. So they meet on different days of the week at different times. They have sort of just standing open times. And myself and John Waverly, our parks manager, went up and met with the group at their request just to sort of discuss things. And it happened to be during the time that they were having their activity. And it's late October, which, the weather isn't spectacular at that time of the year. And on a weekday morning, and the courts were full and lively and busy, and people were having a blast. And there were it was just it was a lot of fun to watch that. I'd been out there previously as well, and seen some of that. But it's continuing to stay apparently busy, and more people are joining. They've gotten the word out. Oregon City continues to be, I guess, the only east side location in the metro area, at least as of last I heard from the folks. So that's kind of the first part, is just to report generally that it seems to be going very well. From our perspective, as far as the department, we've had no issues whatsoever. I've received certainly no complaints from the neighbors. One of the concerns I think we had was maybe we're impacting the existing court space, and is that going to be a problem? Haven't heard anything to the contrary. And I think those were pretty minimally used courts anyway. So everything has been good. A few maintenance issues about things like restrooms and getting equipment in and out. And we've our staff and the Pickleball Association folks have been working together on those, and it just has gone really well. Very organized. They've done a good job in getting the word out. So I think it's been a really positive thing. And I've heard from a few community members that I didn't even know were playing, that I bumped into, who know what I do, and said, "Oh, I'm loving the new pickleball activity." And I said, "Oh, I didn't even know you were going up there playing." So, so it seems to be the word is getting out in the community, and it's going well. So the second part of this discussion tonight, and if this might be the part where at some point you might want to speak for the group, and we'll kind of just go with that. But so the second part is the letter, and again, it's the one that's a little bit shorter version of request. So when we met with the group, the representatives indicated that that they'd like to continue to obviously keep doing this, but also to potentially expand the opportunities. And so that's spelled out in the letter, kind of short-term and long-term goals. The longer-term goals, lighting, permanent bathroom, some additional parking, and some things like that. A little bit more difficult to get to those things, of course, but not that they're undoable, but those would definitely be out there somewhere. We could continue to think about those. But the shorter-term things being requested by the group as potentially as early as this coming spring and summer, and those are kind of itemized there. They'd like to resurface the courts. We've just gone with the courts as the condition that they're in. There's a little bit of some chipping, and they're not in perfect condition. I don't even know the exact age of that surface. It's probably at least 15 to 20 years old, I would guess. So they're in decent condition and certainly playable, but they're definitely going to need an upgrade if they're going to get this type of use, this amount of use. And then this is where kind of getting into expansion would be. So right now they're using essentially half of this surface area, which is half of it is tennis and the other half is a basketball court, full length, full court. The basketball side has been fairly unused, although they set up a little bit of a temporary thing in part of the basketball area. But they're requesting to actually to take out the two basketball hoops, the posts and the backboard and everything, and then restripe that area just solely for pickleball, with the justification being that there's limited basketball playing use, and certainly there's a need or a want to play more pickleball. Expanded, I guess it makes it better for not just their pickup games, their standing times, but also maybe for tournaments and leagues and things like that, where you can have a number of courts. I think they're shooting for 8 courts, and they don't have that capability right now. So that consideration would be something that we would have the possibility that some folks would have an expectation that there were basketball courts there and that they no longer would be there. We did talk about the idea of, and if we get into, we have time to discuss this at the next meeting as well. This is just sort of the initial presentation discussion, but we potentially could put one or two of the hoops on the side court, basically on the side of the fence, so that at least you could still shoot baskets, and those would then not interfere into the courts of play for the pickleball. So that's what that is. And then installation of permanent nets, and instead of just the temporary ones that are out there, which again would impact the tennis as well, because we'd be talking about taking down the tennis net. And then rebuilding the practice board, that's kind of an easy one. That's just, there's a practice wall against one of the fences where you would practice either tennis, and you can do that with pickleball. And just fixing that up, it's old and in not great condition, so that doesn't really impact anything. It just improves the play. So the issues here would be, the considerations would be, first of all, the cost of doing these things. Secondly, the impact to the playability of the courts for other purposes. And then I guess the third thing would just be kind of generally, impact to the park, impact to the neighborhood. Again, I've nothing but positive to report from my end of things, but that's just a consideration to put out there. I think it's in an area that is minimally used in the park, and it's kind of brought that part of that corner of the park back to life, and so I think it's positive. So I think that the biggest challenge to consider is the money. as you see in the letter, the association has offered a $2,500 contribution towards the courts resurfacing. We don't know the exact cost. We haven't gone out and quoted any of these things yet, so we're just kind of, this is a first discussion with PrAC. But certainly it'd be in the several thousands of dollars. We do not have it budgeted. We certainly do have some deferred maintenance funds that we've discussed here before, that a limited amount of those that have been added to our budget in this current budget cycle, that possibly we could talk about utilizing some of those funds, or looking at some potential other things. We can't use SDCs because it's a maintenance type of an item, and we'll actually be talking about that in a little bit on the agenda too, as far as how the SDCs work. So we don't have anything budgeted specifically for this, so we'd have to look at how that would work and what the exact costs would be. We'd probably need to get a little bit more information before we made that any kind of recommendation on that. But and then so I don't know if you guys want to hear from the folks from the pickleball group at all, or that's up to you.
Yeah.
Would you mind coming up to
the
the speaker's table?
I just realized our chairs got moved down.
We have to. The meetings are recorded, so we have to.
If you would just introduce yourself and let us know if you're a resident of the city or not, please.
I'm Allison Beck, and I live in Oregon City, and I've been here 25 years, I think. And I just recently started playing pickleball, probably the last 6 months, I think. I was introduced to it by my neighbor, who is now a zealot, and of course now I'm a zealot of it too. But it's been really interesting because we've really developed kind of a community group that consistently play. We're out there playing. I play 3 days a week in the morning, and whether it's light rain or even light snow, we tend to be out there. So we call ourselves almost the polar bears now. We also are tying into. I know Canby, the First Baptist Church, has some courts, but we like to play outdoors if we can. So if the weather permits, we want to be outside. So everybody checks weather first and goes to Hillendale. I have a friend that comes down from almost the Estacada area into to play. And we've had a potluck with the people that are going, just to talk about kind of rules, and everyone who walks by the court when we're playing, we introduce them to the game and say, come and play. We have loaner paddles there, so we're always trying to incorporate new people into our groups, and we teach them how to play it, and just continue to grow our group. There are people who travel out of town, during the winter or whatever. And pickleball has become such a big sport, and people are so addicted to it. They look like, okay, I'm going to Phoenix, and so where are the pickleball courts? And so it's almost like, Alcohol is Anonymous. When you go into a town, it's like, where are the pickleball courts? And so everybody always checks. So I think it will continue to grow. I've never gone over to the Tualatin area, but I know they have a lot of competitions over at parks over there, and there's some big groups that go there. And I don't know if it's Eastmoreland or Westmoreland gym that some people go to on rain days, or the First Baptist. So again, everybody prefers to be outside. Since I've played there, I've never seen a tennis player come, or a basketball player. And generally, even if someone walks by, we're kind of like, hey, come and play with us. We'll teach you how to do it. And I've also learned that a lot of the colleges have pickleball classes, too. So a lot of the college kids know how to play it. So even to get some of the college kids over there, I think would be a good idea. So I think that's all I have. I don't know, James, if you have anything. Oh, here are our main coordinators. So you guys know them. But I'll let you guys speak. It's kind of open forum at this point. So.
I started at 7:30.
7.
Well, clearly we were.
Yes.
Sorry.
Anyway,
Hi.
Well,
I'll let
thank you.
guys- Thanks, yeah.
So, not knowing what was said.
You can sit right there if you want.
Go ahead.
Okay.
This is a speaker's.
So I'll give you a little brief. I think we've heard that it's doing very well.
Good.
And-
Not only
and-
heard, I mean, we have
Yeah,
witnesses.
I've stopped by 3
And
times.
I think, right now in front of us, we've got the short-term and long-term goals. So I think you're probably very familiar with these.
Except I'm going to modify it.
And if you could touch on them, that would be great.
Not
Kind
just touch, just really dive in there and.
So if you could introduce yourself then when you
Sure.
begin.
So I'm Rita Maynard,
Okay.
and I live on the outskirts of Oregon City. And so I'm active in the Pickleball Association that we have going on in Oregon City. Anything else you need as an introduction?
perfect.
Okay. So the modification of the goals. So just to say, okay, just as far as active play, we've been out there like 6 days a week since June. Still, I mean, some of these people are crazy, and so it's just like in the rain, in the cold. It's just they gear up and they're out there, you know, clink, 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 clink. So this is really taken off. There's a diehard group, and then there's fair weather friends, and how this goes. But it's been impressive about how continuous play has continued to go on. So just want to put that bit. So we found out that because we're playing in the rain, that the traction isn't too bad there, and we're kind of liking that. And there was one of the players who had played at Rivercrest tennis in the rain, and traction not so good, slippery, even though it's a new surface. So we're rethinking the urgency for this year to resurface. In fact, trying to delay it. Tom, our pickleball ambassador, who is supposed to be here, and will probably at 7:30, knows a bit about the mix of what the surfacing should look like, and I think he knows the factor of sand that goes in that increases the traction. So we want to make sure we research this really well before we go into resurfacing, so that we have a surface that's new, that's durable, and that still has traction in the rain. Now that we find out that we kind of want that. So we're with the short-term goal of wanting the resurfacing for next year. We're willing to delay that. So that's a big expenditure to delay, but really want to get it on the table when we have more of an understanding of what the surface should require. However, we'd still like the removal of the basketball courts, the hoops, and have 8 active playing courts. We are certainly open for the basketball hoops to be reinstated from the outside of the gate. I don't know if you've heard this. So there's the
Give a little bit of an update on that.
right. So should the neighborhood association want that, or whoever wants that? When we've been out there playing as much as we've been playing, it is very rare that we have seen anybody use the basketball hoops. There has been a parent and a kid, and there was one guy who stayed there for a while. But really, this is as far and few between as this is going as far as basketball use. But we're very willing to meet with any neighborhood association that has a real desire to have the hoops there, and if that was the case, then certainly they can be on the outside of the gate, and you could paint the bit so that it's usable to, you wouldn't have a full game, but you'd be able to use the hoops for practice. So that's what but then the big event that we want this year is, being that these people are diehards and coming out and playing in all this weather, wind is a factor. So there's a lot of wind going on, and so we're trying to be creative as far as what can you do to modify the effect of wind. So probably if you put some sort of netting, you're opening yourself up to vandalism. So the creative idea is plant trees. So what about arborvitae around there? What about we do the labor, you do the trees? Something like that, so that we can have a windbreak and get that going, and that can grow up as we're then going to look for like next year to resurface and do that. But this year, getting the windbreak would be a really nice idea. So the big events that and also what we're taking off of the list is the permanent pickleball nets that we asked for, because we're seeing how even the tennis net, it can get vandalized and people can push on it. So if we come up with our own, there's roller nets, and maybe provide another storage bin for bigger nets, we'll do that. So you can take off the list the permanent netting, because we're concerned about vandalism for that bit. So what we're looking for this year is the wind barrier. Trees are what we're thinking. If you have other ideas, very open to that. Just what else can we do to mitigate the effect of wind? Having the painting going on for the 8 courts, and let's see, and the basketball hoops removed. With resurfacing, looking at probably the following year, once we understand the whole traction bit. So I think I've sort of, how am I doing here?
Well, we paint the courts strip it. You guys would strip it and put a top coat of green on it, I guess, but we paint it with white.
So we'll do that.
White supplies.
Okay.
So a permanent paint, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we have now, but we have, but that would be the only line, so they'd be pickleball nets exclusively.
So in effect, you'd be getting rid of the basketball lines, and then we would paint the pickleball lines.
Okay.
Any questions or anything?
Joyce?
Okay, so this contribution of the $2,500 that
Yeah.
is on our letter right now,
Yeah.
was that mostly dedicated for the resurfacing, or is
Exclusively dedicated to
exclusively
resurfacing.
dedicated to resurfacing?
Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah.
So you guys are going to keep adding to that coffer for when the resurfacing needs to happen?
Well, that was a donation from the USAPA or
Okay.
Tom. It was directly from Tom. How he came up with that, I'm not quite sure.
All right, so it's
But-
dedicated towards the resurfacing. I just want to
Exactly,
make
because
note of
that would be a big, big expense. And so helping out with that is fine. The tree business, we'll plant. So, to do that, and that was sort of the notion. But good question, and that's how I'm seeing it. Tom can answer more.
I would encourage you to get on the schedule of the Hillendale Neighborhood Association. They'll have a meeting in January, I believe.
Okay.
It's January 5th, Tuesday, January 5th, 7 p.m. at Living Hope Church.
Okay, I'll write that down. Tom?
Yes.
Come on.
Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Grab a chair there, yeah.
Did everybody get a copy of the
Yes.
We
letter? Okay, great. So, well, I guess mainly came to
Tom,
praise.
as you sit down, so we don't go over everything again, just to kind of summarize, we've already been discussing the short and long-term goals. So really, we're just kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts and questions and answer time. So, are there any highlights you wanted to point out that?
Well, I certainly want to thank this Park and Rec Board and especially Scott Archer to have the vision to steer our enthusiasm over to Hillendale Park, which is one of the best success stories in the Northwest pickleball. I mean, it's phenomenal success. You ought to all be proud of it.
I agree with you. It kind of surprised us all, I think, from where everybody was sitting with Rivercrest originally
Sure.
to where this has turned out a year later.
A moribund little place, ignored. People kind of forlornly looked at it, and it's turned out to be a place. On the launch time, we had a good part of 100 people over there. Well, that just doesn't happen that often.
I have a question about the wind. Does it come from one particular direction, or is it just kind of?
It comes across from the jail side, right directly across, and
Does that go from west to
southwest.
east?
whatever direction that might, kind of easterly, northeasterly direction, and it's kind of a sort of a swale there, where it concentrates through there. It's an opening. There's trees on one side and trees on the other, so it's kind of a natural funnel right through there. Doesn't seem to abate very much. Sometimes it's less vigorous, but we had a dink tournament over there, and you'd hit the ball over the net, and it'd keep on going. So it was kind of a comic kind of a thing, but it's real typical to try to do something about that.
If the pickleball goes through the basketball hoop,
Extra point.
Extra point. Well, have you guys explored? I've seen it in the cyclone fence where they put the little strips down through.
That's
one
one
side.
technology. The strips down through the net on the 6 or 8 foot high fence works pretty good. When you start talking about 16-foot high fence,
Right.
then puts a real strain on the fence.
It becomes a structural problem. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty massive windbreak. The mesh netting types of windbreak are popular, but they tend to be a real target for vandalism. Vandals love to get out their knives and carve it all up, and so it's kind of disappointing. It works well in private clubs where you lock up the gates at night, and you have concerned people, but in public parks that tend to stand up very well.
So is it fair to say you really only need the windbreak on one side, though?
Primarily.
Because one of my thoughts was, We don't want to, especially arborvitae, for example, you don't want to provide a sheltered area where crime can be encouraged when you're not there, for example.
Right.
And if it's just one side that's shielded, that
Sure.
would mitigate that.
Sure.
I mean, Scott, are there any, from the maintenance department, are there any concerns with a plant barrier as opposed to, like the strips or something like that?
We'd want to take a look at that and report that back. This is new information tonight. So from when the letter was submitted, and so which is great. So yeah, there's some considerations. Maintenance and security was one of the things I was going to mention as well. The visibility into the site, although from that side, really there's not much to look at. And you wouldn't really have a viewpoint in from that place anyway. You really want to have those viewpoints from other parts of the park, and it sounds like those might remain open anyway. So wouldn't be as concerned about security if it was just on the one side. But I need to review that a little bit further just to kind of think through it and the types of planting, if that's what we were going to do, or potentially some alternative ideas about some other structural things that we might or might not be able to do. So I'd want to take a look at those and talk to our parks staff as well to kind of think through that a little bit and see what considerations there might be.
I got a question in terms of the basketball. What were you thinking as the alternative again? The basketball hoops?
Well, I think Rita actually
Yeah.
mentioned is, and again, I didn't have a schematic to kind of show you. I could maybe do that at the next meeting if we want to get into that level of discussion. But so you've got a full court. If you can visualize,
Yeah.
you've got a tennis court that goes that way, and then next to it is a full basketball court. They're both basically running the same direction. So the two baskets with the posts and the hoop and everything, you'd be pulling those out and then just moving them to the side wall somehow, where however those would be posted or attached. We don't really know exactly what that would look like, but in other words, they wouldn't interfere with the pickleball play, but there would still be the opportunity for people to shoot baskets. You just wouldn't have a full court length basketball court, and you might only need to put one hoop back at that point, or maybe both. I'm not sure. One thing I did talk to these folks about when we met out on the site several weeks ago was discussing it, and it's already come up here. Whatever we do, I think it's a practice discussion, but I also thought that it would be wise to go to the Hillendale neighborhood and just talk about what's going on, and suggest that and because I'd be concerned that the neighborhood, we would make these recommendations and go forward, and then the neighborhood would say, wait a minute, you did this in our neighborhood park without consulting us. So I think that would be a good move for the representatives to go to the neighborhood association and kind of talk about it and mention that we've discussed it. And
As secretary of the Hillendale Neighborhood
Probably.
Association, I will make sure that you are on our next agenda.
there you go. So
What was that date?
It is Tuesday, January 5th, 7 p.m., Living Hope Church, the corner of Myers Road and Gaffney Lane.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, because this is going to be discussed at future dates, and it sounds like you've already revised this list. I always like, because it looks to me like a shopping list a little bit, and so it would be nice to just prioritize. So you have your short-term goals, but within those 5 goals, or I don't know what they'll change to the next time amongst your members, well, what is the most high priority of these short-term goals, and which one do you want to have go in first? So I think that that's really helpful in making decisions too.
Yep.
I would agree with that, and especially when it comes down to a budget standpoint, it allows us, if something has to be cut, I don't want to cut your most important item on accident. So, are there any other questions?
Just, neighborhoods change and so forth, and just because you don't see basketball hoops being used at this stage in the game, there'll be generational changes, and that could change. And I guess I wouldn't want to see the basketball use just disappear completely, but the point is, when neighborhood kids are playing, they don't need a half court. I mean, they don't need a full court. Yeah. So.
that was my concern, was just completely eliminating an activity, even though it may be minimally used, but it's still there and it's available. And yeah, I would be concerned about that, but at least having a hoop to continue to do
Relocate.
so.
And we're already losing complete tennis play, which I think is acceptable, but to lose 2 sports would be troublesome, especially if we don't have to, would be my take as well.
Yeah.
If you want to see a successful version of this, where they took a tennis court and basketball, the Sunset Park in West Lynn, up on Sunset Drive,
Yeah.
they relocated their basketball courts from an end to end to two half courts
Yeah.
with semicircle shooting, and it gets a lot more use because they don't play full length games for that, and having the ability to have two separate half courts really works well.
I agree. And so if you're not advocating for permanent nets, did the tennis nets need to come out?
No.
Okay, so then that can
That's
come
different
back
than
off
what I
too, just all of a
understood,
sudden.
so
Yeah.
So then.
So really, then you're not losing any play except for full court versus half. So, I mean, that's a win-win on a short term.
Tennis nets serve a great purpose as a backstop for the balls. And so we have one other situation where we're installing something that looks just like a tennis net to catch balls on something that didn't have tennis before. And somebody had said, yeah, I wonder if you could make that into a tennis court there. And I thought, well, now we've come full circle.
Anything else?
I'm just curious, how many members do you have currently? 25?
25
Paid members.
paid members,
Paid member-
and quite a few non-paid
Okay.
participants. So the numbers are loose in that way.
So you can play 3 games, and then after that, you've got to.
It's volunteer if you want to be a member.
Yeah. And what is the annual membership?
$20 a year.
Oh man!
Yeah.
If you had 10, I would have joined. But
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe for you.
Well, I think this is one of the great success stories in the city. Really is, and kudos to you guys for being a champion of it.
That's right.
Because it wouldn't have been here without you.
There's 7 pickleball clubs in the greater Portland area, including the Granddaddy, and the Columbia River Pickleball Club, and many people belong to multiple clubs. I belong to all of them, but a lot of people belong to Twelton and Trails End and Lake Oswego now has a pickleball court, which got started about 8 weeks after Hillendale got started, and we have 59 members in about less than 90-day period of time. So it really woke up Lake Oswego over there. So
And does the group have a Facebook page for the local?
yeah,
so you
each
can
one
follow?
of if you went to Facebook, you can go to the Gorge Pickleball Club or Newport or Columbia River, and each one of them post events and time schedules for
So,
each.
Sean,
of
you're
theirs.
not a member of the Trails End Pickleball
No, I'm
fan
not.
club?
I'm not. I need some
We're having
recruiting.
trouble
It's
with
on
our
Facebook. I'm
our
there.
Facebook presence. We don't know how to, other than Facebook members. It just seems like you have to have enough likes or something until it turns on to just be
heard
internet
that.
accessible. So we're not sure how that goes. So our Facebook isn't that available or accessible. But
we can all go there and like it. though.
Right.
Yeah.
You need to get 100 likes or something, and so
Oh, okay.
you've got to meet a certain standard. So
Okay.
we'll work at helping you get to that point.
thank you.
Well, good. Well, thank you all for your time. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for hearing us.
So going forward, then I would assume we'll probably just put this back on our next agenda, which is in January. Just
Okay,
by the
so-
way, we may want to converse. Staff and the folks from the association may want to converse a little bit more about some of the details, and we'll need to review some of those issues about the windbreak and some things like that. And
I would prefer something other than arborvitae. That's my least favorite tree.
Well, and I was going to say, for me, I would like to see, budget dollars next to what's here, just so we can help advise you or recommend, out of those certain discretionary funds that you have, let's move this ahead of something else or not. And if it's small items versus like the painting, I don't know if that's a real expensive item or not. So
I just
And
have
prioritize,
a
too.
quick question.
Please.
That's great.
What is the most senior person? What age? Do you have somebody that's boasting? Or
I'm 66.
70.
okay.
There was the fellow who fell. During the summer, there were some older folks who came, and I don't know, just as a variety, but it's a good question.
Well, I didn't know. Have you been down to the Pioneer Center yet and talked to the people down there?
Not.
Oh, if there was some time you could come down and do a little, maybe set up in the big room there and do a little
Absolutely.
show and tell thing there, and yeah,
That's a good idea.
You might,
Don't break any
might
rules.
get some
Contact the
blood
program
moving down.
director at the.
Okay.
I can connect you with the dots with those if you guys just want.
And
to
they even have
contact.
activity buses to bring people up there.
Hey,
So,
all right.
I mean, that's actually a
Yeah.
standing idea.
Yeah, so, depending on activity level, and people, some of the Lake Oswego folks who are starting out aren't the most nimble. So, there's a whole level of play and can be dedicated sometimes as a court for beginners and a slower court as well as a challenge court for more advanced. So we can accommodate lots of folks.
And where are the spectator bleachers?
Right.
That'll be on the next agenda.
Next year's budget cycle. Yeah.
What I was going to say before you left, too, was that the city operates on a biannual budget, and that won't come up again until a year from January, or a year from next year. So if you have things that the city can contribute to that we have to consider for making proposals, this coming year is the time to think about that.
Excellent. Good
So
to
we
know.
can actually consider getting that into the following year's budget, biennial budget cycle.
Okay.
Yeah, as a dedicated funding item rather than a discretionary item.
Okay, good to know.
Great.
It's getting big enough now where even the, Big Five Sporting Goods have a pickleball section of tennis shoes and things you use.
Sponsors.
It's all over there.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've walked by there and I haven't smelled any vinegar smell at all.
Oh, Doug. All right, let's move along to the SDC report.
So the committee had actually requested a report from me on the status of our system development charges budget. So I'm going to give you a quick review. This was your request, so I want to make it so that you get your questions answered. So I'm going to leave time to answer any questions for you to discuss whatever you'd like to discuss. So I'll just give a brief discussion, and then kind of leave it to you to help me fill in the blanks. First of all, there's a handout at your place, and you have a few different pages. I'm going to walk you through those in just a moment. Before I do that, I want to just give a quick reminder about system development charges. So you hear that a lot, SDCs, and I know probably most of you are familiar, but I don't think a quick refresher is a bad idea. And also, let me give the precursor here that our financial documents are all on the city website. They're under the finance department. Any of our audits, which I'm going to be discussing a little bit, our adopted budgets are in there. Last budgets, so historical and past budgets. So if you're that inclined, you can always go back to you can go to the website and look at any of the greater detailed financial information. These are just quick kind of looks at things. So system development charges, which we refer to as SDCs, they are growth-related impact fees. So that's kind of the first thing. They're authorized under state statute. The state statutes allow local communities to adopt their own system development charges, and Oregon City has done that. We charge system development charges for a number of things: transportation, water, sewer, and parks, I think are the ones that we currently charge for. And they have to be very specifically spelled out as to how they're going to be utilized, and you have to have a formula as to how they're charged and so forth. So again, obviously we have the parks SDCs. They, again, by state law, they may only be used for growth or increased capacity. They cannot be used for maintenance-related items. So, and it's always a little bit of a catch-22 because some of the most pressing needs that we have, we don't have the funds for, but we do have money at times to build new things, which is kind of like I say, it's that catch-22. So, for example, a new park property purchase, adding new improvements to an existing park, or just simply building a new park can all be SDC eligible types of things. Or expanding an existing facility that is related to growth. For example, we've used portions of SDCs for portions of like a new restroom at Rivercrest Park because at least part of that new building was related to growth, and we were able to justify that. Things like that. So, but they do need to be tied to growth and expansion, not maintenance. The SDC budget is unlike some of the other funds in the city. It's a standalone budget. It is its own budget. So if it does not get spent, it carries forward into its own. It does not go back into, for example, the general fund for the city, which is sort of the catch-all where the majority of things land in terms of budget. In operations of, for example, parks maintenance or the operations of our swimming pool or something like that, most of those types of things are funded out of the general fund. They get budgeted and allocated during the budget process. If those budgeted dollars don't get expended, they simply go back into the general fund. They don't stay, for example, in just the pool budget because we didn't spend that money, et cetera. The parks and all system development charges are their own fund, so you'll see information in these documents that say either beginning fund balance or ending fund balance. Those are carryover amounts from previous budget years that didn't get spent. So that's kind of the quick overview of a reminder of what SDCs are, and so those are whenever we do any kind of new development or we buy property, build a new park, et cetera. That's primarily how we fund it, is from system development charges, and hopefully on a lot of occasions for our bigger projects, we will supplement those with grants. We will utilize the SDC charges, the SDC funds as the match for a grant, which is usually required, and we've been able to successfully do that in a lot of our park projects. So the sheets that you've got there are, the first one is just an excerpt. This is directly out of our budget document, and it shows you it actually shows several budget cycles of SDCs. This is the far right column shows you that is our actual adopted budget in the current 2015 to 17 budget cycle. Again, we are now on a 2-year budget cycle. So that's roughly about $3.7 million budget. And that includes things that are line itemed, like land purchases, development, and things like that. But we also have a large contingency in there. The way that we do this is not we put potential projects in the narrative of that where it says goals and projects. Those are things that we would be likely to utilize the dollars for in the coming budget cycle. In the individual line items, if you looked at our actual full budget detail that I was referring to that's online and available, what you'll see is just line items that say land purchase, capital development. It doesn't say Wesleyland Park or something like that. It does not name the actual projects in the line items themselves. And then typically we will just carry a lot of the SDC budget in contingency, which can be freed up to use for projects as we see fit. Our finance folks, so going on to the next pages, that's the adopted budget. Those are just estimates as you're doing the budget process. You don't know the exact amount of revenue that you're going to end up with because the times that we prepare the budget it's not at the end of the budget year, and so the actual numbers end up slightly different. So your actual amount of money, and that's what these next sheets are. These are the audited numbers at the end of the fiscal year, and then they're projected for the next couple of years in our budget cycle. The first one is, it says for fiscal year ended June 30, 2015. That is the ending fund balance. So that amount is about $3.3 million. And so basically that's the amount that we have in the budget, and then we also project out new revenues as we charge and receive new SDC coming in from any type of new development. So housing and commercial both are charged parks SDCs. We get new revenue. It's just kind of hard to project exactly how many new facilities are going to get built that you're going to receive SDCs for. So that's sort of how our budget is based. Is we start with that ending fund balance, and then we work it into our actual. So then the next sheet is essentially just a projected revenue and expenditures what we might anticipate our cycle to be, and those are based on the actual money plus what we'd projected into our budget. The ending fund balance in 2017 on the far right and at the very bottom is $1.5 million. That would be projected at our current level of anticipated expenditure. That might be how much is left at the end of our budget cycle. But again, we've got, if you want to just kind of basically sort of boil down this conversation, we're looking at an account balance right now of a little over $3 million. I think that's kind of the essence of why this question was asked. It was a little bit of explanation to get there, but I just want to make sure you understood that. So, that's an adopted amount that's in our budget, and it's available. In essence, that's kind of the bottom line. I would just say, if you want to just think in big picture, you're looking at just a little over $3 million. The graph is the last thing, and that may or may not be useful. That just sort of shows some trending. If we spend down the money, the expenditures go up and the revenues go down, and eventually you spend that out. That's just kind of a little visual of what the spreadsheets are showing you. To go back to the first page real quickly, what we have potentially anticipated in our goals and projects is we always kind of make the general statement in our goals of utilizing the Parks and Rec Master Plan as our document to sort of guide the discussion of how we use our SDCs. We've talked about potentially exploring funding for an expanded and new restroom at Chapin Park. I talked about how you can kind of use some of those funds, but not all of them for an existing restroom as long as it was increased in capacity. The Riverwalk project at the Willamette Falls Legacy project, we have discussed the potential to utilize some of the SDCs towards that project as that unfolds. We'll have more discussion about that. I'm not sure at this point exactly how that would work, but that's something that's been at least acknowledged, and that was anyway. That's something that's obviously very high on our city commission's goals list. We've talked about Trails Master Plan refinement. I think, Doug, you've especially brought up the idea of looking at how our trails link and so forth. So we've used some SDC funding to help to develop our trails plan because that leads to increased capacity. And then we get into the planned implementation of our new parks that we've master planned recently. So we've got Glen Oak, Filbert Run. We still have Wesley Lynn kind of acknowledged on this list that we have a second phase at some point or some future development there. And then the last thing that's on there is revisiting our waterfront master plan. That was a commission initiative that was requested. I'm not sure yet what we're going to be doing there, but I'm not sure exactly how that ties in to. I'm not sure whether how that's going to proceed exactly, I guess is what I'm saying. We have an existing waterfront master plan that encompasses the Clackamet area, and there's been some discussion. We've talked about our RV park quite a bit. Some discussion about that general area and how it would either sort of redevelop or be improved, and so those are some potential uses of. There's some potential use for SDC funds there. So. Yeah, so I think the PRAC idea here would be that you're thinking of in terms of prioritizing projects and helping to set some of those things in motion. I guess the final kind of closing comment I would say is what we've been doing over the last, from about 2004 until just a couple of years ago, probably through the completion and the opening of Kenema Children's Park, for years we collected a lot of SDCs for parks because of new development. The parks master plan from '99, and then it was updated in '08, but mostly the '99 plan had called for purchasing new parklands, which we did, Glen Oak Park and Filbert Run and some others, and building of new parks, Wesley Lynn, John Storm, Kanema Park and other improvements that have been made. We went through a phase where we did a heavy amount of improving and developing and utilizing our SDC funds. And so then about over the last 2 or 3 years, we've kind of gone a little bit more into sort of just, if you will, not spending, but collecting and letting the account sort of build back up again. And that's where we're kind of getting to that point now where we can start looking at how to utilize those funds towards some projects that would be eligible to do that. I would tell you that at least on my list of recommendations is the idea that we would want to take a good look at Glen Oak Park and be thinking about. I believe that park is a good candidate for the state local government grants program, which is the grant program that we've been highly successful in receiving funds for a number of projects, and putting some of our SDC money up to leverage towards that. I believe that in this coming cycle for that grant fund, the Glen Oak project, of anything that we would look at in our city projects list, probably is the most eligible project that we've got per the criteria for that grant fund. So I would be thinking of that in terms of looking at a way to capitalize on some existing funds that we have and to capture some additional dollars from outside of our city. But with that, I'll sort of conclude there. I know there's going to be some questions and discussion, but that's hope that's at least a little bit of what you were looking for, and I'd be glad to answer any questions and sort of fill in the blanks from there.
Doug?
I was just looking, and I know we have some areas that we're not able to build in because of sewer issues, but I'm looking at the revenue piece for 2016, 2017, and I see a lot of new housing starts in Oregon City. So those may be conservative numbers. That's good, I think, to have more conservative numbers before you actually see the money coming in.
That's what we try to do, actually. Yeah.
I think that might be an under projection of the actual revenue we'll see in that period.
Typically, you're absolutely correct. That we try to be conservative in our revenues estimates so that we hopefully will end up with more than versus less and be in that situation. So that's yeah, it's hard to say exactly, but we definitely try to err on the conservative side on that and hope that we come out better than we thought.
I was going to ask that question amongst some others. So just to piggyback on what Doug said, how do you achieve those numbers? Is that a short answer? How do you get to like the 443,000 versus the 706,000 in 2014? I mean, I know that the 706 is actual, but I'm surprised that it's that low. In other words, it seems to me, I'm just wondering, where's the basis? Does the building department give you their projections of what's coming in the door, and there's a set number, and you're just extrapolating that, or is this a guess?
It's mostly a guess,
okay,
to be perfectly honest. And we work with our finance department through the budget process. We do work with the community development department, the building department, and Public Works does a lot of projecting of their SDCs. So sort of collectively, there's sort of just basically educated guesses, but again, probably on the lower side in the hopes that you would end up. And that money, it goes right into our contingency and is available to be authorized to be used. So
right,
it can only get better typically, yeah. It's not super scientific, I guess, is what you're asking, yeah.
Anybody else?
I just want to say, I mean, I definitely like hearing that. Of course, we try to leverage these funds with matching grants from outside. And of course, increase its effectiveness that way. So that's always good to hear.
Well, then, I was the one that asked for this, and I would just say this is much better than I anticipated the number was going to be, and it seems to me, and I would suspect I could speak for most of this board, that it's definitely time to start moving forward on Glen Oak. I think we're further along than I thought we would be at this point. I think last year when we were ending the master planning process, we were telling those people several years down the road, and I didn't think we would be ready to apply for grants, but I think we are. And
the positive thing has been the surprising amount of new development, quite honestly, that has really kind of quickly regrown our account after spending it quite a ways down for a few years, and so it's been. I agree. It's been faster than I would have anticipated. If you asked me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have expected that either. But it's a lot of housing is going in. A lot of new
Well, and I think more is going to come. I
More
think
coming.
that, like you said, this is very conservative. So are you in a position in staffing to do that?
That's the,
To not
I'm
the
sorry.
build, but are you in a position to, do you have the time, the man hours now to start working towards this next budget cycle for the grants?
We do, yeah,
do? Okay.
yeah, we do. The grant, applying for grants and that type of thing. That's something that we do, and I think we've done pretty well with that.
Yeah.
So it's not extremely staff intensive. It takes some time, but the main thing is just doing a good job versus it doesn't take a ton of time. So yeah, we're in a position where, as we get into the cycle in 2016 for the grant program, I'm anticipating, and I'd like to hear from the committee, and I'd like to continue the discussion. But I really see that Glen Oak is our top priority. It has been in our master plan. It's been, as far as PRAC's discussions have gone, for the last several years. So I think we're in a good position to begin applying for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. And
move
so
on.
we can continue,
Yeah.
further discussions at future meetings as we get into those types of, when the grants come up and when we start looking at, moving forward on projects. The other thing, though, I just want to kind of wrap it up with is just a reminder, and I know I'm a broken record on this, but we've got to be thoughtful about how to take care of things. We're continuously having those discussions, and there's always a little tricky balancing act, because certainly as the director of parks, I want to provide the services that our community would like, and that's a high level of service requests that we're receiving. But we have to balance that with our ability to take care of it, and we want to be able to take care of it if we build it, and so we'll continue to have those conversations, and we're not going to solve that tonight, but that's always going to be a concern or an issue that's important. I think it's important. I know it's important to PRAC as well, but we want to be able to take care of things. So
I just know how long those people have waited for this, and I just think I think we're at the time now that this board is saying go for it. It reminds you, it's a lesser. It's a bad example, but like when we started with the dog stuff a couple years ago, it took a while for that to get going, and it seems like sometimes it's a little slower to get to the end. So the quicker we get started on this, the better. Okay, Newell Creek Canyon final planning community event.
We're skipping 5D.
Oh, we are?
I don't know.
Oh, yep, we are. Sorry, my bad. Member position openings. So earlier we had interviews, and this is a time to discuss those or make motions for appointments.
Well, I think that the interviews went well, and we had really qualified candidates, 3, obviously, who are currently or former PRAC members. And I would move that Roger, Mike, and Sean be appointed to the 3-year term, and then Christopher, who's the newer member, be appointed to the 1-year term.
And Mike Mitchell to a 3-year term.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And motion carries. Good job. Okay, now let's talk about Newell Creek Canyon final community planning event.
this is just a reminder. I believe I communicated this via email, and some or all of you may already be on the Metro's list anyway, so it might be overkill. But just a reminder, it's the final planning event for the Newell Creek Canyon, and it's December 10th, 5:30 p.m. at the old high school campus, the Jackson campus.
So it's a different location for everybody if you've been attending those in the past. They've been at the Pioneer
Do you know
Center.
which room at the Jackson campus? Are they using the gymnasium?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it was on the flyer that was sent out.
I thought it was the cafeteria,
The cafeteria?
but I'm not positive.
Okay.
That was
'cause
what came to
I
mind.
looked at the flyer and couldn't find it.
It may not have said, because I think I just extracted the information directly off the flyer, and I didn't have. I would have probably
So
put that
if you
on.
find out which
Yeah.
room, send me an email and I'll pass it on to my friends too. I think it's going to be really important for the entire community to be there, the outdoor enthusiasts, but also those of us that just like to walk on sunny days, because both of our needs need to get met. There'll be a children's play area planned, so those with small children need to come and give some input as to what they would like to see for children too.
Scott, aren't you a stakeholder on that?
I am.
Group?
Yeah, there's a stakeholders group that meets apart from these public meetings as well. And I've attended all those meetings. And
We've had a Hillendale neighborhood representative also on that committee.
Has there been any shift? Sometimes you get down to the end and all of a sudden things.
No, it's stayed the course of what I think it's been. I'm
the last
pleased,
meeting,
yeah.
if I can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was some discussion on mixed-use trails versus some dedicated trails and things like that, and that's all still kind of progressing.
Yes.
So this is just distilling that down a little more.
And they've got it basically distilled down to kind of like a final preferred recommendation, and I was pleased with it. I thought it represented all the, you're never going to make everybody happy. There's always going to be a little give and take, but I thought it represented the different interests that were presented from the community, and I think Metro's done a nice job on figuring out how to make as many people happy as possible, and I think the most important thing is a little bit about what you were talking about, Joyce, but just opening it up, getting access, creating a place, and making that incredible place available to our community that's been essentially closed off for years. So I think it's good, and it's pretty much stayed the course from what you probably saw it last time, just more refined.
Great, thank you. So next on the agenda, we've discussed this a little bit last month, was the annual election of officers, and Scott pointed out earlier that our bylaws suggest that they're voted on in January, and my goal was to open it up for nominations in December. So this would be the time for that.
I'd like to pose a question, and I'm not, but is anybody interested in specific offices? If they, if they could actually state that they have an interest, whether it be continuing an office they're holding, or whether they want to take an office, I'm not interested, but it might make it go a little faster.
I thought we had a nomination the last meeting for Daniel.
I said that I was going to this month, and
I'm sorry.
I had spoke with Daniel, and that was my goal, was to nominate him for chair.
And I'd be willing to do that. So.
And I definitely did not want to do that this year.
So then
my plate's right at the.
Yeah. So how about vice chair?
And I would be happy to do that, because then I'd only have to do 1 out of 12 meetings a year. Any other people interested in? And you won't be here, so okay.
I think Bob would be quite pleased that he was no longer chair.
Yeah, and Bob was here last month and kind of heard that discussion.
You guys know how to make me excited for the job.
No, he's enjoyed his time.
Really building it up, aren't they?
Right.
It's really enjoyed, yes.
No, and for me in the past, it's been really rewarding. And I enjoy the opportunity to engage the city commission on the positive things that we do.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time that the good part about this committee is, we're usually not upsetting people. We're usually making more and more people happy by what we do.
That is true.
It's the one group that's that way. So, any other items on the agenda?
So just let me confirm what I'm going to write down here is that Dan has been nominated to be the chair, and Sean has been nominated to be the vice chair.
Yes.
Correct.
Thus far, that's what's on the floor.
Yeah.
And then you would vote on that at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other general business items? Okay. Future agenda item then is, again, we'll just reiterate it. We talked about it a minute ago. Next month we'll elect the officers. And I think in the times that I've done this in the past, when you nominate a month early, it doesn't mean we can't bring something else to the table at that meeting too. So oftentimes doesn't happen. Future agenda items that I would like to see also on next month, Scott, if you would please, is maybe included in the email prior to the meeting, is our 2015 to 2017 goals. And I would encourage the new chair to just have that as an agenda item to bring up with the new people just for a point of discussion.
No.
Where we're at, yeah, we've done a few of these. We've got a little bit more to work on these, and that sort of a.
Well, it seems to be a good idea just to review that,
Yeah.
at, every January anyway.
Well, and
Yeah.
usually in the past we've
Yeah.
always had to redo them.
Right.
And that's the good part about this year is
Right. It's a review.
broad. All right.
We'll
Not
do,
necessarily at the January meeting, but we've had some, before we came into this meeting, some discussion about bylaws. It might be a good idea to review our bylaws, and we had a specific thought about one component of it, but to look at them and maybe have some discussion as to whether there are other things that we would like to look at in the bylaws.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I know they're on the website, but again, maybe if we included those in our kind of agenda packet
Right.
for next month to review. And if it becomes a meeting that's, overloaded, that's an easy item to move
Sure.
to February.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Any others? Good. Let's go to member reports. Roger, can we lead off with you?
Sure, that'd be great. Okay. Here are the items I have to report tonight regarding the Pioneer Center. Number one, Clackamas County Criminal Crew was on site for leaf pickup and cleaning. I have a kind of funny story because I walked out in an orange jacket and all the guys stopped, and then I saw the sheriff behind. And
It's a poor day to be wearing an orange jacket. Yeah.
that's why I felt kind of a little funny. Number two, Giving Tree is up and ready for people to take tags. Items collected go to the Oregon City Retirement Center. Number three, building issues crop up. This month there was a thermostat in a classroom, and the incumbent bike in the workout room was broken. I didn't put that on it. But number four, a Christmas party and meal is planned for December 23rd. I don't know what time that is yet. 5, energy assistance is offered this time of the year, and all of our available units were taken. And this is an annual event funded through the state. 6, class sign-up went well and filled quickly. 7, local trips were open this week for sign-up and filled quickly as well. The next issue is public art for the library. The Public Art Committee met November 18th, reviewed each of the 56 applicants' letters of interest and qualifications based on prior work. And I just want to say we had applications from New Jersey, Louisiana, New Orleans, California, Canada. So there was quite a few. It was pretty diverse as far as around the country. We were able to pare down the applicants to 6 semifinalists who will be invited to interview on Monday, December 14th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. At this time, I haven't been given any details of the interview process. And I listed, for your information, I had listed the artists and the different breakdowns of what they sent their application in for. So those are available for you. And the last item is the Oregon City Parks Foundation. We are still on hold and waiting to get our bylaws pro bono back, or pro bono review back. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Grace.
Just want to remind everyone to watch the library camera to see the construction that's going on, and that's fun to watch. When you click the fast little screen that shows everything going by, and then you can stop on specific times just to really see how that's coming along. There's also a camera that's up for the school district's transportation facility, which is right across the street from the Glen Oak Park, and to see all the trees come down, which is a little sad, but they are really screaming along very quickly on that building project. So take a look at those cameras, see what's going on, and I hope to see all of you on Saturday at the elevator anniversary celebration at 3:30 for our municipal elevator and 4:30 for the tree lighting down at Liberty Plaza.
Will you be doing John McLaughlin on Saturday?
No.
No, okay.
A couple things. One, I'm chair of the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, and there's a project that's will be going forward in one of our parks, the cemetery. There is a stormwater outlet that directs water down into Newell Creek Canyon. It's referred to as Scattering Creek, and the reason being that people will take ashes and scatter them at that particular location. It's like so many of our stormwater systems that are in our old neighborhoods, especially the ones that go into Newell Creek Canyon, they really scour the canyon. The Greater Oregon City Watershed Council was able to secure some funds from the Nature Conservancy to have the Public Works do a wetland delineation in that park area, and to actually make that as a better wetland feature in the process. So I was going to suggest that maybe sometime next year we might have Public Works come in and speak to us about it, since it is actually on park property. The other thing that Sean mentioned is that he and I were on Veterans Day at the Veterans Foreign Wars facility there on the bluff, and it came up in our discussions that there is a plaque for a Congressional Medal of Honor winner who had sacrificed his life to save other members of his troop. I believe it was in the Korean War, but that plaque is at the very back end of the Clackamas the Museum of the Oregon Territory, and unless you know it's there, you won't see it. And there was some discussion of moving that to a position where it could be more easily seen. Now, I assume that plaque was given to the museum in some fashion, but it'd be nice if we're in a location that where people that are going onto the promenade and up to the VFW building can actually see that plaque. And that came up in a discussion. I don't know if it'll ever involve the Parks Department or not, but if the decision is to actually be coming up close to the pathway there, of course, that could come on park property. And something else came into my mind and went out of it, so I might come back in a minute.
Well, I was just thinking with what you said about the plaque. Didn't we have a discussion at one point about Glen Oak and memorials in Glen Oak? And I don't know if, yeah, I mean, I think the VFW is a great idea as well. I mean, that's very appropriate. But maybe we need to revisit that as well. And that would, if we actually create something like a memorial garden, which haven't looked at the master plan lately, but that'd be another place where it could be. It could almost be a center point and something like that, centerpiece. So, other than that, I have nothing to report.
I have nothing to report except that I've really enjoyed serving with all of you guys. I came here as a newish Oregon City resident and a mom of two very young girls, and being on this committee has really been really educational and beneficial. So I really have enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Couple of things. Tomorrow night, do any of you like to laugh? Tomorrow night at the Interpretive Center, 7 o'clock, the Oregon City Trail Alliance really has a great opportunity. We're going to do a little bit of a fundraiser, but a fellow by the name of Joe Kramaski, who travels all over the world on his bicycle. He's written several books. He's a comedian. He also has a rare iron disease. It's the way iron's processed in the body. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, I guess the guy's a hoot, and he has agreed to do us a favor and come and do a comedy act and share some of his stories about his rides. And I guess I've never heard him, but I've heard they're pretty crazy. So 7 o'clock, it's a suggested $10 donation, but if you want to come and just hang out, that's cool. And there's no host, beer, wine, and we'll provide snacks and so forth. So,
Wayne, was that an OCTA fundraiser?
Oregon City Trail Alliance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that, did you say, was at the end of the Oregon Trail?
End of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center at 7 o'clock.
Okay. in the theater there?
I think so. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. Let me double check, and I'll get your number, and then we can, or whatever, I can let you know. But and then the other thing is back in January of 2013, I proposed turning the Oregon City Amtrak train depot into a bike-themed kind of community center bistro, centering on cycle tourism and tourism in general. And so it's been a long haul, and the city's been very supportive of the project, and we just got our funding. So fully approved, fully funded, and so we're moving forward. So it should be, if all things go well, should be open in March.
Wow.
St. Patty's Day celebration.
Yeah.
Great. Well, and I have nothing new to report either, so I think we'll move on to the staff report. I'm excited to hear about the off-leash dog areas.
So thank you. The 3 new sites are officially open. They're advertised in our trail news and on our website and our different outlets. So the signage is in place, the infrastructure, which is actually pretty minimal, but those are up. It's pretty early yet to give you much of a report on successes or failures. We'll be talking about that over time. Of course, we intended to do this as essentially a 1-year pilot project, so we'll keep revisiting that. And to date, I've heard only positive feedback, not a lot, but I've received a few unsolicited comments from community members that have just noted that they appreciate those. Certainly have not received any negative feedback from park users or neighbors of parks or anything like that, but I would say that's cautious optimism at this point because it's pretty early, and with the weather being what it is, it's not the time of the year where lots and lots of folks are out. So we'll have to kind of reassess as we go along, and we'll continue to talk about this and report back as there's anything to report. And certainly if any of you hear anything good, bad, or otherwise, I would certainly appreciate to hear the feedback just to know how that's going. So
I'd be curious from a staff standpoint, like I remember a prior maintenance manager was very skeptical about the dispensing stations and waste around, and so those would be things I'd be curious from a staff standpoint that it doesn't take citizen comments. What's your staff feedback? Is that a problem? Is it you don't want those around ball fields, but on the other hand, if there's too much in the dog area too, then especially an unfenced one where children could get into, that could be an issue.
Absolutely, yeah. There'll be a big part of it is our own kind of monitoring that and seeing how it goes.
Good.
So.
Great.
And then next is just a quick update on the Oregon City High School construction program helping us with our Barkley Hills Park playground. Again, Barkley Hills is the park that's by the cemetery, not the Barkley Park that's just up 12th Street off of Washington by the old Barkley School. Not that one. It's the one over by the cemetery. So that's moving forward, and it's a budgeted playground replacement, but we've been fortunate to get the help of the high school construction program to really give us a lot of additional added value to the project, which just simply means we'll get more out of the project with the money that we have to spend. You're already going to start seeing some a little bit of ground moving over there with some hand digging of kind of excavation, and what's going to end up happening is I believe I brought you a drawing at the last meeting, and if you wanted to go back and look at that, or if you're interested, I could resend it. But because of the elevation of the park and where the existing or the old playground's not existing anymore, it got taken out, kind of dropped off. And in order for us to do this correctly, and we're putting in the rubberized mats material, in order to do the drainage correctly, we actually have to, there's going to be a little bit of a shelf at the end of the playground as it kind of drops off. The park drops way off into a canyon. And the drainage area and the runoff of the playground is such that we have to kind of build up a little bit, and there will be actually sort of a little shelf at the end of it. We're going to put a little safety fence. I'm talking about maybe 1.5 foot drop off, but it'll be kind of an interesting look just because of the topography of the park and doing the drainage right. But you can kind of, if you went by the park, you'd start to sort of get a visual of that at this point in time, and it'll be a it's going to be a really nice improvement. We've already heard from some of the neighbors that are excited that we're making that improvement, that it's been something that's been needed for a long time. So we're excited about that, and I'll keep you posted on the progress. We're looking at, it's not going to be done until next spring, basically, but we're just doing some of the preliminary work. The Ermatinger House project is, for all intents and purposes, the renovation project is complete. Still got just a couple little minor finish-up things, but it's pretty minor, to the point where we're basically saying that the renovation is done. Now it's on to the next step, which is figuring out how to program the building, and we're still working on that. We did a little programming study last year. We've talked about that before. I may be revisiting that with this committee in the coming few months here, and we're going to be talking to the commission and to the community or whatever, and determining the best course of action to reopening that. Certainly in the coming year, we'll have some type of a celebration, a grand reopening of some type, and we're working towards those things. But it's a major accomplishment. It was a commission goal for several years running, and we've finished that part of it. So. Recreation update, your written report, we're a little behind on those. We usually send them out to you in advance of the meeting and then just advise you that if you have any questions to let us know. We haven't sent those yet, but it'll be coming soon. It'll land in your email box, and as always, those are just informational. If you have any questions, give us a holler and let us know. The Phyllis Stocking, Fill a Heart program is looking for help. There are donation packets that can be picked up at over 35 businesses throughout the area. They have a website, fillaheartfillastocking.org, if you want more information or want to look into that at all. Joyce mentioned the elevator celebration and the tree lighting ceremonies on Saturday, and so thanks for doing that. And then lastly, I just want to say thank you to Kathleen for your service. It's been greatly appreciated. You've been, I think, a really good person to have on the committee, and your input has been very valuable. So thanks for your service. That concludes my report.
Great. Well, next meeting's January 28th. I would hope that at the Hillendale meeting, you would encourage those people to attend our meeting if they have some comments relating to basketball hoops, tennis courts, things like that. That'd be a good time for them to provide us that direct feedback.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope.
We'll have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and this meeting's
Kwanzaa and
adjourned.
Festivus.
That's right.